Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Today is Monday, July the 13th. Overall markets coming into this week, we do have a decent amount of red folder news events. We have earnings kicking off this week as well with big financials. Yeah, with that being said, a couple things to talk about coming into market open here. Hope you guys had a great weekend. What's up? What's up, everyone? Good morning. Good morning, Kelvin. J10. Good morning, B Roots, Maria, Andy, Cody. Good morning, P1 Knight, Lamit, Gerald, Sinna. Good morning, Juan, Robert, Law. What's up, Julius, Deuce. Good morning, Maria, Andrea, Z Norris. Good morning, Rocket, Chris, Dolo. What's up, everyone? Bobby, Gemini came in. Yeah, what's up, everyone? Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. With that being said, let's take a look at the red folder news events, and then we'll take a look at the earnings calendar, and then we'll make our way down into the charts. Yeah, with that being said, what's up, everyone? Good morning. Let's take a look at the red folder news here today. So, coming into this week, there's no red folder news, at least for today. The rest of the week, we do have red folder news. Tomorrow is going to be a big day. 8:30. We do have core CPI month over month, year over year. So that's something to keep in mind. And of course, we do have Ched Fair testifying that it's going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. As for Wednesday, we have core PPI month over month. And then we have Fed Chair testifying once again. That's going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Someone's mentioning is the select option trading at 7:30 starting today. So that was the original date that was supposed to be released. So today we're supposed to have pre-market, or sorry, we're supposed to have options trading starting in the pre-market at 7:30. But if I'm not mistaken, they did delay that into August the 19th, if I'm not mistaken. But they delayed it for a month. So you don't have to worry about that. That is not going to take into effect today. And of course, some other news events that we have is the stock futures. That's going to be at the end of the month. I think July the 27th. So that's going to be stock futures, and at least for the pre-market options, that's going to be in about a month from now. Other things to keep in mind coming into today, we're going to have core retail sales. Sorry, not today, on Thursday. Core retail sales. We have the retail sales month over month, and then we also have the unemployment claims. That's going to be at 8:30. And on 10 a.m. or Friday at 10 a.m., we have the prelim consumer sentiment with the inflation expectations as well. So, as I mentioned this week, action packed for the economic calendar wise, basically red folder news almost every single day. We have a bunch of orange folder news events as well. So with that being said, let's take a look at the earnings calendar since we do have earnings season kicking off here as well. Let me grab some water here before we get started. Okay, let's take a look at the earnings calendar here. There is a bunch of earnings. Usually it kicks off with big banks and financials. And then we'll make our way to some of the tech names, right? Netflix is reporting this week as well. And then next week, we have a bunch of big tech reporting. So, with that being said, let's take a look at some of the earnings this week. On Tuesday, the big banks are reporting. As you can see, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, all these ones on Tuesday after close here as well. AEHR, that one's been a nice mover as of late. Some other notable names to keep an eye out for: ASML on on Wednesday. You have BlackRock, another bank here, Morgan Stanley, PNC. As you can see, a bunch of the big banks are reporting Tuesday, Wednesday. We do have United Airlines reporting on Wednesday after close. And then for some bigger ones, you have UNH on Thursday before market opens, TSM one of the major semiconductors. That's going to be on Thursday before open. Those are really the main notable ones that we do have. You have like something like Wise, so another financial name. And then of course on Thursday, sorry, you have Netflix here as well. So this is one of the big tech names that we have this week is Netflix on Thursday. And that's really about it for this week. So big banks reporting, and then you have UNH, TSM, and then Netflix on Thursday. So with that being said, that was really some notable things that you have to keep an eye out for coming to this week in regards to some news and the earnings. With that being said, let's kick it off on the charts as well. We'll start off on the SPY and Qs, of course, on the higher time frames, and then we'll make our way down into the rest of the names here as well. Let me grab some water here before we get started. If you guys are enjoying this so far, I appreciate if you guys drop a like and sub. If you guys haven't joined the free daily watch list, that of course is in the description below. This month is pretty exciting with especially earnings coming up. We have a lot of retail things coming up as well with the pre-market options, with the single stock futures. So a lot of things are coming to retail, which is going to be a great addition to what we already have. Okay, let's start off on the SPY. We'll head on to the weekly time frame, and then we'll make our way down into some other names as I mentioned. So starting off with the SPY here, let me actually zoom this in for you guys as well. Okay, it's already zoomed in. But for the SPY, let's talk about this on the weekly time frame. As you can see on a week by week basis, this one of course is remaining bullish here on the higher time frames. Higher lows are being built. A lot of consolidation the past 2 weeks in between this 760 along with this 730. If we're talking about a week by week basis, last week's candle close was indeed fairly bullish, right? You can see what we created here was a lower wick, and then we ended up having a strong candle close closer to our all-time highs, right? We closed above our we closed above our previous week's highs, and then now we're closer to our all-time highs. So in this case, so pretty big buyers that stepped in last week, more so on the SPY. And with the strong weekly candle close, our next levels really is going to be that all-time highs here. One thing to keep in mind is that the SPY is leading the markets back towards the upside. The QQQ has been lagging behind, of course, and then the SMH has been a little bit weaker as well. Currently in the pre-market, we're dropping. We had the SK Hynix IPO on Friday. That was another major news event that we had as well. And that, of course, is going to affect a lot of the memory names. So something like DRAM and the rest of the names as well, MU, SNDK, it's going to have a significant impact on that, of course, moving forward with, of course, the IPO and taking some liquidity out of the market. So let's head on to the daily chart. Do you guys have a huge wick in the pre-market on SPY? Most of the times, whenever you have a huge wick on the lower time frames, that has to do with some data provider issue, Andrea. Sometimes it's a TOS thing, sometimes it's a trading view thing, but you have those type of wicks, those huge wicks that you have all the time. If we're on the daily chart, as you can see right here, key levels that we have marked out is that 720 to that 760. As you can see so far, we've just been primarily ranging the past month or so. Last week, we ended up bouncing off our key level of support, which happens to be that 740. And you can see we end up driving back up and towards our 750 here. And the high that we created, this was from earlier in June, that's 755. What I want to see in the market is really that push up in towards that all-time highs, which is our 760 here on the SPY. This one, higher time frame, still very much bullish, right? We're building up higher lows. I wouldn't say we're crazy bullish based off of the last 20 to 40 sessions. I'd say we're more so consolidating, but of course the weekly is bullish and the daily is starting to flip bullish here as well, back above the 9 and 21. So for SPY, what we wanted to see, as I mentioned, is that push back up in towards that all-time highs here, of course. So what are the levels that we have coming into today here on the lower time frames? The main levels that we have marked out, we can actually just refine this down into that 751. It's just going to be this level right here. 751 is going to be key. As you can see, we have a touch here, another touch on Thursday. On Friday, we end up using this as a retest. So once we ended up holding above our retest level, you can see nice continuation back towards the upside. Coming into today, what I'd like to see is just a hold of that 750 for that pushback up and towards that previous day highs and potentially above. So we'll keep an eye out on the SPY today for the hold of our 751. What I don't want to see is the flip back underneath for a pushback towards the downside. If this occurs, then we'd be a little bit more neutral slash bearish on the overall markets if we end up rejecting off this 750. But if we can hold that 750, we can see this push back up in towards that previous day close, along with our previous day highs and above. So just keep an eye out on that 750, is there 751 to be exact, coming into today here on the SPY. That's going to be your exact level that we have moving forward. If you go into the 15-minute time frame, you can see how many touches we have right off this general area, 751 coming into market open. All right, with that being said, let's go on to the QQQ. So we'll head on to the Qs, we'll go into the SMH, we'll take a look at DRAM, and then we'll head on to the futures and then the tech names. All right, starting off with the Qs weekly time frame. Of course, this one is very much bullish still here as well. Weekly time frame has more so just been consolidating. Sorry, the past really month here. Higher time frame, still very much bullish. Weekly's bullish, basing above that 9 EMA on the weekly as well. So a little bit more consolidation. As you can see, the Qs is not as bullish compared to the SPY. The SPY is closer to that all-time highs. The Qs is closer into the middle of the range here, which is more so that 720 here. If we're on the daily chart, you can see this a little bit more clear. The past 20 to 40 sessions, a lot more consolidation here on the QQQ. If we do want to see some upside, as I mentioned, now we'd like to see kind of this higher time frame wedge pattern form. And we really need to see the break outside this wedge pattern above our 730 for continuation towards the upside. Of course, if we break underneath, we can see a push right back down and towards that 700 and below. So key levels, at least for today and moving forward, on the daily chart, number one, what we have is this smaller range that we have marked out. It's 700. Last week, you can see buyers end up stepping off our 700, which is our double bottom. And we end up having that nice pushback into the middle of the range. We filled that small daily gap that we had here as well. What I like to see moving forward, if we do want to see any sort of break back towards the upside, number one, it's going to have to get above our 740 here. And we can also mark out this level, which is our 730. At a minimum, right, we need to see that flip back above our previous day highs for any sort of continuation higher. What are some of the levels that we have coming, or sorry, on the hourly time frame? Some of the levels that we have coming into today, let's just get rid of a couple of these ones. Really for today, what we have is our previous day highs. And then we have our 714 marked out, which happens to be our low that we had on Thursday. So for the Qs coming into today, or if we kind of zoom out here on the hourly time frame, let's just get rid of the EMAs really quickly. Key levels that we have marked out is really the area that we broke down from. So we kind of rejected off this level here. This is our previous day highs as well. And then we have this level, which we broke out from, which is our 714. So coming into today, if we do want to see some upside in the markets, potential previous day low bounce or off that 714 for a pushback towards the upside. The best case scenario is if we can get above our previous day highs. The SPY would be above our previous day highs here as well. It would definitely be a lot more bullish in the markets if we could do that. So this is what we have for the Qs. And then of course, if you want to see some downside, I like downside here on the QQQ underneath our 714. If that's the case, we can see a potential flip for a move down in towards that 708 and below here on the QQQ. So that's what we have coming into today. The levels, in my opinion, are a lot more cleaner on the SPY chart. So keep an eye on the SPY chart. As for the Qs, we're more so just ranging. So it's a little bit, the levels are going to be not as powerful as the the SPY levels. But you can just kind of have these general areas marked out, which is at 725 as the top, and then we have the bottom, which is our 705. You can see for the Qs, we end up rejecting really off this level, which we already have multiple rejections off of. So right now, with us being inside the middle of the range, I'm going to be a lot more patient on the Qs since there's not really too much to talk about here. So these are the main levels that we have marked out: 725, 715, and of course our 705, which is the bottom of the range coming into this week. Okay, with that being said, let's head on to some of the semis. We'll put back on the EMAs here as well. Okay, let's go back onto the weekly time frame here on the SMH. My voice is actually feeling a lot better this week as well, so hopefully it should be good within a couple of days, but I definitely felt a lot better after the weekend. All right, so for here on the SMH, as you can see on the weekly time frame last week, we ended up putting in a little bit of a lower wick. What we have here on the daily time, or sorry, the weekly time frame, lower wick, ended off with a very small body with a small upper wick here as well. So for the weekly time frame, we dug a little bit deeper into a key technical level, which is just our down close candles. We had that 9 EMA here as well. So nice buyers that stepped in on the weekly time frame. We ended up closing bullish for the week. Right, so the location was pretty solid. Ended up bouncing off key levels, 9 EMA. Ended up closing strong. Buyers stepped in. And as you can see, we end up having a decent candle close. Of course, we closed back in between its previous week's range. And now, right now, we are still trying to form a daily double bottom here. So if we go into the daily chart, what we have marked out is this 560. Sorry, what we have marked out is this 560 here. So far we are trying to form this daily double bottom here. And now what we like to see is this pushback towards the upside on the SMH. You can see we're underneath the EMAs here now as well. Definitely a little bit weaker. And of course, the momentum has been slowing down on the SMH. And last week we ended up gapping up and we had a couple gap fills. As you can see, last week on the charts, we had this gap towards the downside, then we had this gap back towards the upside. We filled basically majority of the gaps that we have on the daily time frame. If we go into the lower time frame, let's bring out the levels that we have coming into this week here as well. Let's get rid of some of the indicators that we have. So for the SMH, the key levels that we have coming into this week is going to be our 620. One of the major levels that I have marked out is this 605. This is the area that we broke down from. And as you can see, we kind of have multiple touches around this general area. Price tried reclaiming back above on Friday after filling the gap towards the upside. And of course, now we're gapping down. So for the SMH moving forward, what I'd like to see here, let's go into the lower time frames. Key levels that we have is, let's kind of draw this out, 596. And we also have our 604 here as well. So if you want to see some upside, potential previous day low bounce for a move back up and towards the highs, the flip back above that 605 here as well. Back up and towards our previous day highs is in play. So these are the two scenarios that we have for some upside on the overall markets. If we want to see some downside on the SMH, really what we like to see is now underneath our previous day lows. Sorry. Key levels that we have is our 592. Sorry, 592 underneath our previous day lows. If we can get underneath that, we can see a potential move down in towards that 580 on the higher time frames. And of course, our next level all the way down in towards that 572. And that is underneath our previous day lows here on the SMH. So this one is definitely a little bit weaker compared to the QQQ. And of course, if we're comparing to the SPY, which is a little bit more bullish, the SMH was a little bit weaker last week. The main thing, of course, is the MU earnings that we had a couple weeks ago. And of course, we had the SK Hynix IPO on Friday, which is taking some liquidity out of the markets as well. So a lot of things are being kind of rebalanced kind of coming into this month after that MU earnings, which we'll talk about here in a second. We'll head on to the IWM, and then we'll head on to a couple of names as well. But let's talk about the IWM very quickly. Just talking about this one, weekly time frame, still very much bullish, building up higher lows here on the IWM above the 9 on the weekly time frame. If we're looking at this on the daily time frame, higher lows are being built on the daily above key technical levels. So for the IWM, like to see it maintain above this 290 for this push back up in towards the all-time highs. So for the IWM, what I would like to see is really this level that we have marked out. The range in this case, I would consider IWM right here. In between our 290 along with our 300, and then the middle of the range is this 296. So right now you can see we bounced off the bottom of the range last week. Now we're kind of closer to the middle of the range. If you want to see some upside, you need to get back above equilibrium and preferably above this 302. If we break back underneath, hold, then we can see a push down in towards the bottom of the range, which is our 290. All right, briefly go over the futures charts, and then we'll head on to some other tickers now as well. Some of the levels that we have for the futures, same thing for the ES. It's just going to be that previous all-time highs level. We can kind of readjust this just a little bit to our liking, but the key levels that we have marked out is our 75.80. Multiple touches, as I mentioned from last week. If we do want to see some upside, need it back above the 75.80 for continuation. If we flip back underneath, we can see a push back down in towards the middle of the range and potentially the bottom of the range. And then for the NQ, key levels that we have marked out, similar thesis here, right? If you kind of zoom out on the NQ, all we're doing is just ranging. Key levels that we can have marked out is our 30, basically our 30,200, and of course the bottom, which is our 29,200. So for the NQ, key levels is going to be this. Let's turn on some of the levels. What we have marked out is our 30,000, which currently we can see a couple of rejections off of. And now we are pushing back down in towards the middle of the range, which is our 29,600. If we want to maintain upside, maintain above the middle of the range for a push back up in towards the top of the range. If we break underneath, we can see a flip back down in towards the bottom of the range here on the NQ. MNQ, yeah, MNQ is the same thing as the NQ. They're basically both derived off the same chart. Similar thing here as the QQQ. They're just different levels, but the exact same thesis still applies. All right, with that being said, let's head on to a couple other names here now. We'll head on to some tech names. It's about 8:30 here. We actually don't have too much time, but if you guys do have any charts or any tickers you'd like me to go over, you guys can drop them in the chat here now. If you guys are enjoying this so far, I appreciate if you guys drop a like and sub. If you guys haven't joined the free daily watches, that of course is in the description below. We'll start off with Tesla here. I'm just going to grab some water real quick and then we'll get started. Okay, we'll start off here on Tesla. We can take a look at this on the weekly time frame very briefly. We'll put on the EMAs very quickly here as well. But for Tesla, really not too much to talk about. Really a lot of consolidation on the weekly, the daily time frame. Sorry, we're getting tighter and tighter here as well. But a lot more consolidation within the past week or so on Tesla. Pretty big range, might I say, but really not too much of a clear direction. Some volatility that we have, but no clear direction on Tesla. If we go back onto the lower time frames, the only levels that you need to focus in on are some of the lower time frame levels on the hourly chart. So for Tesla, the key levels that we have marked out, at least this week, is our previous day highs. We can kind of readjust some of these as well. Previous day highs, let's just mark this down. Our 412, and then we have our 408 along with our 402. So these are the main levels, at least coming into this week. We can just have these marked out and just wait for the reaction that we have off these areas. So for Tesla coming into this week, a break underneath that 400, we can see a flip down in towards that 390 here on the higher time frames. If you want to see some upside here on Tesla, the bounce off our 402 or of course back above our 406, we can see a move back up in towards this 412 here on the higher time frame. So For Tesla, let's keep an eye on that 402 reaction coming to market open. Underneath, potential continuation lower to 400 and below. And if we get above, we can see a potential bounce play. Let's take a look at AMD here on the daily chart. The daily chart looks like one of the best here in the markets. This is the only one that's holding up, with of course the past kind of more so consolidation on the spine cues, right? AMD is consolidating right at our all-time highs. This one looks ready to go. If we can get above our 560, we can see this flip back towards our all-time highs and above. So for AMD, we're above the 9, we're above the 21. We held that 500 key level support very nicely. The break above that 560 is going to be key, as I mentioned. If we go on to the lower time frames, what we have marked out is this range. So we're looking for this range break here on AMD. Just draw this out. 560. You can see we tried breaking above it a couple times, failed to hold above it. Tried last week once again, but was not able to close back above that 560. So you can see this is the bottom of the range. This is the top of the range. What we need to see is a break above that 560, a hold above that 560 for a continuation towards the upside. So that's what we're going to be waiting for here on AMD. Some of the levels that we have coming into today, let me kind of just refine this. Some of these levels, you can just refine this up into that previous day highs. We have our 560. And then other levels now that we can have marked out is our previous day lows, 540. So coming into today here for AMD, what we're going to be looking for is the previous day low bounce for a pushback towards the upside. Of course, if we can get above that previous day highs, that would be fantastic for continuation higher. There is a slight gap fill towards the downside actually. So AMD, if you get underneath our previous day lows, don't be surprised. Even though the higher time frame is bullish, we could see a potential retracement intraday down in towards that 520 here on the higher time frame. So underneath our previous day lows, potentially we can see our 520 just because we have a little bit of a daily gap here. So we could very much well come back down, fill that daily gap, and then look for that continued push back towards the upside. Let's take a look at NVIDIA here. NVIDIA was a name that we traded last week a couple times. Pretty solid bounce right off that weekly break and retest level. So for NVIDIA, we had our nice level of resistance that turned into support. Nice buyers that stepped in, and you can see we're now pushing back up and towards that 210. If you go on to the daily time frame, key levels that we have marked out, as I mentioned, is that 210. We want to see that flip back above that 210 for a potential continuation higher. What are the levels that we have marked out coming into today? As I mentioned, we have our 210, a little bit of rejection off this area, very key technical level here on NVIDIA as well. Other levels that we have marked out is really the area that we broke out from, which is our 205. So for NVIDIA coming into today, we're so far kind of in between its previous day's range. So I'm going to be a little bit more cautious on NVIDIA. We're still bullish here on the daily now. We're trying to flip back above, maintain above that 205 continuation. We can also mark out that pre-market highs here today. Above our pre-market high, continuation back up in towards that previous day highs is in play. I'm not that interested in downside. You could be looking for some sort of downside trade down in towards our 205. But we'd still be above our previous day highs, so I'd be a little bit more cautious on NVIDIA downside coming to market open. Let's go on to Apple. Apple's one of the strongest tickers here in the markets. Consolidation last week, right at our all-time highs, forming a little bit of a flat top break here on the lower time frames now, so above our all-time highs, continuation on Apple. Let's go on to the lower time frames. So far, as you can see, kind of building up this mini flat top break that we have. Higher lows are being built as well. For Apple, above our 316, hold above our 316, we can see potential continuation back towards the upside. What I don't want to see is really a strong rejection and then a potential reversal, like a sweep and reversal and a push down in towards that 308. But this is in play here as well on Apple. So let's keep an eye out on the reaction that we have off that. For Google, this one on the weekly time frame, still holding up fairly nicely. I do like Google here. As long as you can build up a higher low on the weekly, you can see it made something similar to this. Once we broke underneath the 21 on the weekly, we reclaimed back above this one, broke slightly underneath. Now we're reclaiming. Let's see if we can get that next leg towards the upside on Google, as long as you can maintain above this weekly higher low. Microsoft, nice bounce off that 340 we talked about a couple weeks ago. Now we just want to see some buyers step in. If we can break back above our previous week's highs, then we can see continuation back towards the upside. Key levels that we have marked out on Microsoft is just going to be our previous week's highs. We need it above our 390 flip for continuation back up and towards our 400 and above here. So that's what we have on this one. Meta, pretty solid gap up on Friday. Some nice buyers stepped in on Thursday, gap up on Friday. We had some news the week prior as well, and we also came back to fill this daily gap that we had from earnings. So for Meta moving forward, key levels that we're going to have marked out is going to be that previous day lows. Key levels, previous day lows. We also have our previous day highs marked out here as well. 660s if we want to see continuation bounce off 660 for a push higher above our previous day highs is in play. What we don't want to see is the flip back underneath. If we get back underneath our 660s, I don't really have any support all the way down and towards that 630. I'm not saying it's going to fill that full gap, but you could definitely see a little bit more weakness on Meta if we get underneath that previous day lows. Amazon, this one, not really too much to talk about coming into market open. More so just consolidation. We're trying to get back, get outside of this range. If we go into the hourly time frame, key levels that we want to see break above 250 if we want to see some upside on Amazon. So that's going to be the key level, more so on the hourly 4-hour time frame, or if you look at it on the hourly time frame, just kind of just draw out this line. 250 is the line in the sand. If we can get above, continuation. If we reject, which we're currently trying to do, we can see a potential break back underneath. If we break structure back underneath 240, we can see a flip back towards the downside. Netflix showing a little bit more weakness underneath our 75, and of course SpaceX as of late. This one's starting to show a little bit more weakness. Now we're underneath that IPO low, which is our 150, and of course the actual IPO is at 135 a share. So that's really the next level here on SpaceX. If you turn on the drawing tool, or sorry, if you turn on some of the levels that we have, currently, as you can see, we're finally breaking underneath our 148, and we're underneath our previous day lows here as well. We have some shares that's going to be unlocked coming soon on SpaceX. I do expect this one most likely to gravitate down and towards 135 a share, which is that was supposed to be the pre-IPO price, 135. So that's the next level. So far, you can just mark out that previous day highs along with that previous day lows. All right, with that being said, we'll kind of speed it up a little bit more. We'll speed run through the rest of the tickers now. Go over MU, the rest of the semi memory names that we do have on the charts. Your zones, charting is elite. A lot of times I have my zones slightly off and use yours for correction. Thank you for the information. Helps me a lot more than you know. Awesome, DeMarcus. Glad to hear that. If you want to understand exactly how I draw my levels and zones as well, you guys can go on to the free daily watch list. I have a video, the pinned video in the Telegram, and you can watch exactly how I draw my key levels. So for MU, you can see this one's definitely a little bit weaker. The past couple of weeks, you can see it all closing red. Last week, some buyers did step in, but compared to its previous week's candle, a little bit smaller of an upper wick, and not as much buyers kind of stepped in off that 9 EMA. If you look on this daily chart here, so if you look at this daily chart here on MU, buyers are stepping kind of off this 880, but now it seems like we're about to come back down once again. So we kind of have this double bottom forming, but buyers stepped in, and now we're about to retest this level once again. So for MU, really kind of just draw an 880 line in the sand, maintain above 880, continuation back towards the upside. If we do break underneath, then that's where things are going to get a lot more interesting. If we can break underneath our 880 here on the higher time frames. As for the lower time frames, currently, as you can see, we're rejecting off this 1020, which is a level from Thursday. And now we're underneath our previous day lows here, at least for today. So key levels that we have marked out is just that previous day lows. Keep that in mind for today on MU. If we maintain underneath our previous day lows, we can see continuation lower towards the downside. Underneath pre-market low here as well, down in towards that 900. If we want to see any sort of longs, we need to see that flip back above that 950. SNDK key levels that we have marked out is going to be this 1850, exact same thesis, but the levels are a little bit different. For INTC, this one's a little bit weaker now. So we had that nice bounce off our 100 key psych, push up, and of course the market's been showing a little bit more weakness as of late. So now for Intel, this one got back underneath the 9 and 21. And you can see it's a little bit weaker here. Now we're holding underneath that 120. So next level for INTC is actually going to be all the way back down into that original area that we bounced from, which is our 100 key psych. So for INTC, key levels that we have marked out is going to be that 118. And then of course now we can mark out that previous day lows. Other levels that we can have marked out as well is just going to be our low that we created from last week, which happens to be that 105. So underneath our 105, or sorry, underneath our previous day lows, we can see some more downside. Underneath our 105, we can see a flip here for a potential push all the way back down in towards that 100. WDC, not too much to talk about. We'll take a look at Palantir very quickly here as well. Palantir is in a very key technical spot on the daily. What we have marked out is just our 124, maintain above that 124 flip. Underneath our 124, we can see a push right back towards the downside. All right, go over Marvel quickly. Marvel is in a very key technical spot as well, bounced off the daily gap fill. Now for Marvel, we just like to see maintain above, sorry, and a potential flip back above that 260. Kind of had that rejection there on Thursday. So we want to see it back above our 260 if we want to see any sort of continuation back towards the upside on this ticker. TSM has earnings this week, and then you have a couple other names. Hood kind of gapping down a little bit here. So at least for this week, like AVGO is still holding up. Let's kind of go over the main watches coming to today, and let's talk about the game plan very briefly. The Telegram is in the description. That's the only way to get into the channel, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's a public channel, but the best way is through the free daily watch list, and they can connect your Telegram to your WAP in order to gain access. There's a lot of scammers out there on Telegram and everything, so I'll never message you on Telegram asking you to deposit money into crypto or anything along the line. So just quick kind of disclaimer there. So if I'm asking you for money, that's definitely not me. So that's something to keep in mind if you're on Telegram or any other channels. So the only way is through the WAP. So that is something you want to be aware of. Do you share your screen during the live session in Discord? Yes, Mark, I do. Let's go on to the SPY. We can take a look at SK Hynix really quickly here as well. This one was a IPO that we had on Friday. Fairly important. So the key levels that we can have marked out is going to be that previous day lows. Currently, it's gapping down, right? Gap down in the Asian markets, and a gap down over the weekend. And this one is down about 10% here in the pre-market, which is a pretty decent amount, right? The only levels we really have it to base off of is our pre-market levels that we can have drawn out along with our previous day lows. So pre-market high we can have drawn out. We have our pre-market lows that we can have drawn out along with our previous day's range as well. So that's what we have for this. Let's go on to the SPY coming into today. Key levels, as I mentioned, is just going to be that 750. If we maintain above, we can see push towards upside. As I mentioned, flip underneath, we can see a push down and towards that previous day lows. Qs is already at our previous day low, so we're going to keep an eye on our 715. This is the key levels that we have for the higher time frames. So for the SPY is going to be our main watch coming to today off our 751. As for the main watches today, what are we going to keep an eye out for? Tesla will keep an eye on that bounce off our previous day lows coming to market open. AMD, similar thing. Let's keep an eye on the reaction that we have off our previous day lows. As for NVIDIA, I'm going to be a little bit more patient on this one. I'm going to take a look at Apple above our previous day highs coming into today. If we can break above our previous day highs, we can present an opportunity for continuation above this previous day highs 317 or potential FACO trade. So we'll keep an eye out on Apple. And then for the rest of the names, what I'll be interested in, MU off our previous day lows. I'm open to playing both sides here on the market since right now we're a little bit weaker, and then Intel underneath our 105. If you can get underneath our previous day lows and underneath that 105, I'm going to be interested in an Intel move down in towards that 100 here on the higher time frames. And then for upside, there's not really too much upside I'm interested in. Really, the SPY is kind of leading the markets higher. A couple names are showing a little bit more weakness. So at least for today, going to be a little bit more patient. That's kind of been the game plan for the last 2 weeks, more so a month in specific, where we've just been open to playing both sides of the markets. Don't have an overly bias coming into this week. Be open to playing both sides and wait for the reaction that we have off key levels. So that being said, gonna call it a day here. Hopefully you guys did enjoy that. If you did, appreciate if you guys drop a like and sub. With that being said, I will see you guys all tomorrow. All right, take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Peace.